I've had lots and lots of messages from you saying, Julia, can you please talk about double stops? How do I get started? What do I need to watch out for? So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in tonight's video. I'm going to teach you the ropes of how to play basic double stops. As with everything else, the most important thing we have got to get right, first of all, is our right hand is the bow. Of course, when you're thinking about double stops, the first thing you'll be thinking about is, oh yeah, our left hand, how do I have to bend it? How do I get all my fingers in the right place? But actually, that for now is of secondary concern. The first thing we have to learn to do is to play two strings simultaneously and really, really evenly. So that is the first thing we have to learn to do. Now, how do we do that? The first challenge is we have to identify the right upper arm level, so the level at which our elbow needs to be to play whichever combination of two strings we want. Yeah, so perhaps the easiest one to start with, as usual, is the middle two strings, because obviously they're quite level. So where do I need to be? I need to balance my arm in such a way that I'm neither too heavily on the lower string, you can hear now, it's not even, or too heavily on the upper string, you can hear that's also not even. So you just want to find the point where it's balanced. And again, you can apply the test that I always use, the little jiggle test, that you can move both strings just using your fingers without actually making a sound. And once you've got that, there you have it. Now, obviously, on the outer strings, you have to repeat that process all over again. And remember here that you also have to adjust the angle at which you bow. Yeah, on the C and D, when you're playing those together, you're obviously going that way. So you really have to go with a C string angle here, not with a G string angle. Likewise, on the outer strings, so on the A and D. We've got that, and we need to go with the A string angle, which is, as usual, out and away. So you really want to aim for very, very, very even sound, so that you can clearly hear the individual notes. Very nicely into really one chord without any scratching of any kind. So now that we've hopefully got our right hand sorted, let's take a look at the basics of the left hand. What is important in the left hand in order to play double stops? Well, there are three main things that I would point out here in the setup, and they are really things which I don't just talk about in the context of double stops, but which you will have heard me go on and on and on about in pretty much every other video. The first one is having a really good hand shape. This C shape that I always talk about is really important here, because if we don't have this kind of round shape and this dome here in the back of under the back of the hand, really, we won't be able to cleanly play both notes without accidentally touching one of the strings with a finger with which we shouldn't be touching it, basically. And that's one of the things that lots of people struggle with. So that really sort of round shape is incredibly important. Next, and that is related to the first point, is we need to make sure really that we're playing on our fingertips here. So we can't let the fingers collapse like that, because again, if we do that, we will be hitting neighboring strings, which we can't do when we're playing double stops. And lastly, but perhaps most importantly, we want to make sure that we align our hand from the fourth finger backwards, not from the first finger upwards. So fourth finger needs to be really perpendicular at a right angle to the string, and everything else gets derived from that. So if you're doing it the other way around, you will very often end up with something like that, and there is no way you will ever be able to play a double stop, and certainly not play a double stop in tune. Let's start with our first very basic double stop exercise, and that is that we're going to play double stops using an open string, basically. So we're going to play first a little major scale and then a little minor scale, during which we'll form different double stops with the open string above, like so. So we're going to start with A and D. Now, so that's your fifth. Be really aware which ones you play. Now, first finger. Your fourth. The third. And finally the second. The first two of these, the fifth and the fourth, are both perfect intervals, yeah? So with those, it's very, very easy to hear whether they are in tune. Now, the first one, obviously, is your open strings. So, you see, you can already tell that's gone down a bit. So obviously, that's what the test we also apply when we tune, right? So, are these two matching? And then the first finger is your perfect fourth. So, and that's another one which you can hear. I would say, how do I hear? Is it in tune? Is it not in tune? When it's in tune, you don't get any what I call interference. So you can just hear when it's not tuned. It grates. It's really not easy on the ear. However, when we really hit it, suddenly you can hear that the whole instrument starts to resonate. So that's what you want to listen out for. Now, the third in that little scale here, that needs particular attention, and it actually needs a little adjustment from us. So I'm just now going to play that little scale without the open A string. Yeah, so there I have it. D, E, F sharp, G. And in that case, you can hear that I'm playing my F sharp reasonably close, so really pulling towards the G, yeah, to get that in tune. Now, if I, however, I do exactly the same thing with the open string, listen out. That doesn't sound in tune now whatsoever. Now, why is that? And that is a little phenomenon that I will explain to you, and that's based on the harmonic series. So if we are playing our harmonics on the cello, you can see as you're going up, they're getting ever higher, ever closer together. Now, for the first time here, you get the major third, and you can hear that major third in the harmonic series is really noticeably nearly quarter tone flat. Now that means that when I'm playing that third in the context of my double stop, that's how I need to play that third, I need to play it deliberately flat in order for it to sound right as a chord. So listen out. Now if I play that separately, it's really like nastily flat, yeah? So, but here it works. Exactly the same exercise with the minor scale, and here with the F natural we have to do the opposite. We need to deliberately sharpen it in a double stop for it to sound right. So for a second, you can see that that is my hand shape. So very, very, very open here, really good C shape. So in that way, I'm never in danger of accidentally touching the open A string and spoiling that, yeah? And while you're doing it, always pay attention to the bow, that it's really even. Another thing to watch out for when you're playing double stops is always use the length of the bow, use a speed. Do not press, because downwards pressure is actually going to mess with intonation, yeah? So speed of the bow, but no downwards pressure. Really even. Listen out for the individual notes. A very quick break from our double stops, just to say that I'm hoping you're enjoying the video, and if you do, please remember to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you're really enjoying my content, you can now also become one of the people who help me to be able to make more of it in the future by leaving me a little tip via the coffee link below. Thank you very much, and let's continue. Now, let's take a look at the sort of most common double stops that we find within first position. Now, of course, there are first of all the octaves which we are forming with the open string, which we're playing with the open string and the fourth finger above. So those you will already know and have probably already played. So now let's look at the other type, and those are mainly thirds and sixths. So we're going to just play around a little bit within first position and see what we can find there, which really common double stops we can find there. Now, so here we've got a good starting point is actually to do the open string, the octave. Once you have a nice clean octave, then with your first finger, you build a major third. Remember again that here the third is going to have to be lower, so the first finger has to be further back than would otherwise be the case. So that's a really common one that you'll find. Obviously also on the other strings. That 4-1 third. Then you will get different kinds of sixth, yeah? So again, we have major sixth, we have minor sixth, same intonation rule applies, yeah? So you always essentially have to imagine what would the triad be, yeah? So if I play here, for instance, I form a sixth with, from the G with the B below. So imagine in G major, the B is the third, it's got to be lower again. So that's a very, very common double stop we have in, well, initially in first position, but later on elsewhere as well. So with the fourth finger being on the higher string, the third finger being on the lower string. In that configuration in particular, we really need to bring our whole arm so far forward so that the whole weight is on the fourth finger. Yeah, when we're playing a double stop, you always need to angle the arm really towards the highest finger. Yeah, because that's the one that's the most disadvantaged in a way. Yeah, so if you really need to give everything to the highest finger, and the lowest one will balance from there. Yeah, so, and you will feel when you're doing that, when the fingers are on different strings, you'll feel that the fingers feel a lot further apart than they would when they're on the same string. Yeah, so that's another thing to watch out for. The major 6 from A to F sharp is another really common one. Yeah, so always remember again, major 6, actually the fingers are closer together than they would be if you were playing the notes on their own. When you're playing the minor 6, they're a little bit further apart than they would be when you're playing the notes on their own. So that's just something you kind of initially have to get your head around. And this whole concept, by the way, is called just intonation. And we're using that for double stops, but we are also using that, for instance, when we're playing chamber music with other people. So when we're sharing the chord out between ourselves, for instance, in the string quartet, very often cello might play the bass, viola might play the fifths, and the second violin might play the third in the chord. So their whole life's work is very, very often just constantly adjusting into the chord. And then of course very often in the first violin you will have melody on top of that. So that's why when, like me, you are playing a lot of chamber music professionally, you spend a lot of your working time playing things very, very, very slowly and tuning chords. So there you have it, a little introduction into the wonderful world of double stops, which of course once you get into it really opens up a whole new world, a whole new repertoire. And I would really, really encourage you to make double stop practice a very, very regular, if not daily part of your practice, because there is pretty much nothing else which helps us really to sort of drill correct hand shape like playing double stops. And of course now I showed you really sort of the basics, the octaves, the thirds and the sixths, but actually one double stop which is probably the most healthy one to practice is actually fourth. Yeah, so find your octave first, and now build the fourth on top. There you go. So yeah, so you could hear initially that I hadn't quite got it there. You could hear that little bit of interference, and then you adjust it. You just have to learn to listen out, and always make sure when you, ideally always kind of try to settle the lower note first, and then when you add the next note, that you make the adjustment in that note without moving the lower one again. And that's a really, practicing fourth is a fantastic exercise because, as I said, it's a perfect interval. You can hear immediately whether it's clean or not, and it really helps you to sort of drill this hand shape. One last thing that I would say you have to watch out for is your left thumb. Do not squeeze with your left thumb, yeah? So obviously technique should already be covered by maintaining the C shape, because when you have a C shape you should really only be touching very lightly with the tip of the thumb, but make sure the thumb does not collapse inwards and do that. And I warn you that when you're new to this, it will do that a lot. So watch out for that corrected right away, because the moment the thumb does that, you can see what it does to my finger, so it's an instant intonation killer. So there you go, little crash course in basic double stop playing. I hope this has been helpful. As usual, if you have any questions, do pop them in the comment section below, and I look forward to hearing from you. Cheerio.